the Pew Research Center has been tracking the nuns, NES, for those who don't claim any religious affiliation at all, and we're seeing a tremendous trend, and I won't go through the various the minor details, but they're projecting that by 2070, if the trend continues, we could have as few as 1/3 of the United States as Christian, and so we're facing a tremendous challenge. And again, I reaffirm, yes, we have the need for those that will reach out to the unreached and the underreached and all of that. But the United States, North America, as all we got to do is look around, and we see that we're facing just a tremendous crisis.
Hello, and welcome once again, everyone, to Calvary Conversations. I am your host for this episode, Dr. Joshua Paxton, Director of the Burnham Center for Global Engagement here at Calvary University. And joining me today are three wonderful friends of mine. I have Jon Hansen, Assistant Director of Village Missions, Doug Clark, Executive Director of the Association of North American Missions, and Dr. Henry Vosburgh, Executive Director of Midwest Church Extension. And so I have known these gentlemen for quite a while now. Well, at least 10 years. Some of you longer than that, I'm sure, when I was a student, even when I was a student here. And so, but I have known them for a long time, and been in conversations with a lot of them, really come to understand their heart for the United States and reaching people in the United States. And so coming up in January will be Calvary's annual missions conference, the Conference on Global Engagement. And these three individuals will be joining us for that, along with, I think my current count is somewhere around 27, 28 mission reps. It's proving to be a rather big conference this year. And so, but today, we've only got 26 minutes, and so I want to get us to our topic, because today I think is a very important topic. Oftentimes when we think of missions, our mindset is continually over there. That is something that we do somewhere else. We need to leave the United States. We need to go somewhere else to do it. And while that's not wrong, there are definitely some nuances, and there's an important conversation to be had about what missions looks like even here, right here in the United States. And so I've invited these three gentlemen to talk about this topic of why America. Why does the United States need a concentrated missions effort? And so these three guys are experts in that question. So I'm excited to get us started. I'm going to open a question. You guys any of you are welcome to chime in at any time and answer it. If nobody answers, then I'll start picking on people. So, all right, let's go. So directly on what I just talked about, some who are involved in missions might say that we need to focus more effort overseas on the least reached or the unreached. What would you say to that? What would your thoughts be to that particular statement?
Well, I would say, Josh, that again, from a biblical perspective, that the whole world is in God's perspective as far as salvation is concerned. And I go back to Acts, where you shall receive power, go out as witnesses, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, all over the world. And I believe that we really are not truly John 3:16 people and gospel people if we isolate one place from any other place. But we definitely start in Jerusalem, right where we're at. And I'm concerned for the idea we've gotten into this situation in America today because of this concept of going overseas at the neglect of home, because home is where we're at. I'd say if somebody's in China, a Christian in China, they should go where they're at so that they keep the home fires burning there. That's always the idea of going out from there, but you need an anchor place. And, this is our Jerusalem. And I've had missionaries say, what's going on in America? You're not getting us any missionaries anymore. And I'm like,
Mm.
that because that's where our piece on the Nehemiah wall is, to work at keeping the home fire evangelized. And you got new people coming into America all the time. Let's just be truly global with this, starting right where we're at.
That's good. That's good. Henry, Doug, any thoughts?
Go ahead.
Henry Vosburgh here. I could say that the concerns that get expressed by that are really a limited understanding about the coverage issue. The coverage issue of the gospel, if you are simply looking at where has the gospel been since the day of Pentecost,
yeah,
then the thought that hitting the uncovered areas, people groups, demographics, however you want to break it down, is a valid point. That's something that anyone who has
Sure.
a heart for the Great Commission and a biblical understanding of it would not embrace that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Except the problem is that whole coverage issue is not nearly as static as that. It's an extremely fluid scenario. When we think of coverage, we can't just think in terms of geographic points on the globe. We can't even just think of ethnic demographics either.
Mm-hmm.
We have to think in terms of generational demographics. A generational demographic incorporates the fact that, what my area where I have planted a church might be reached for the gospel in that day and time. But 40 years from now, that presence of the gospel may not be there. There's a whole, and even if it is, a whole new generation of people have pretty much supplanted the previous generation. And so now there's a whole nother generation that must be reached. And so to say that America would be a completely reached geographic area would be true in terms of physical geography, but in terms of generational coverage, that changes with every birth that ever comes, and that's global. That wherever local is happens all over the world, and that's no different here than it is somewhere else.
Right.
That is an excellent. I mean, that is actually a very excellent point, Henry. Even as we look at Europe today, there was a point in time in which Europe was largely Christian. They were the initiators of the modern missions movement, and yet we look at Europe today, and most European countries are less than 1%. Many of them less than 0.5% evangelical. And so your point is a very good one. So, Doug, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'd just say that without a doubt, the least reached and the unreached are close to God's heart. God has called many missions and missionaries to reach out overseas, and there's no diminishing of that mission field as well. But the statistics here at home don't look good. The Joshua Project just did a recent survey. There's 522 people groups in the United States, and 98 of them are unreached people groups.
Yes.
It lists the largest religion as Christianity, saying it's 76% of the population, but they only list 26.3% as evangelical, which would be what we're actually seeking to accomplish. And the evangelical growth rate in the United States is only 0.8%, whereas the global rate is 2.6%. And so we're losing ground in that. The Pew Research Center has been tracking the nuns, NES, for those who don't claim any religious affiliation at all, and we're seeing a tremendous trend. And I won't go through the various the minor details, but they're projecting that by 2070, if the trend continues, we could have as few as 1/3 of the United States as Christian, and so we're facing a tremendous challenge. And again, I reaffirm, yes, we have the need for those that will reach out to the unreached and the underreached and all of that. But the United States, North America, as all we got to do is look around, and we see that we're facing just a tremendous crisis.
It's true.
Yeah. So, right. So it's not an either or. You know,
No.
send the missionaries there, have the missionaries here. It's a both and.
It
These are not things that are in competition. Both of them need to be happening. Both of them need to be priorities. Even, you know, Doug, that, you know, so even 26% evangelicals. Barna recently did a survey in which only 43% of the respondents 43% of the respondents agreed with the statement, Jesus is a good moral teacher, but he's not God.
Right.
Which basically tells you that 43% of that 26% aren't actually believers. Because if you don't acknowledge Jesus's divinity, then you're not actually a Christian. So the percentages are even worse than they might actually look like, right? So this is not a competition. It's all for the kingdom, whether we send them abroad or we keep them here. So all right.
That statement that you said is true, and I think it is. Then it's even beholden to us to that if those are the folks that we're wanting to see from where our sending out missionaries come from, then they don't have the foundation even to go overseas. And we've left, they're not ready to go overseas. They want to go overseas, but we're not able to send them because we haven't prepared them. And that means we need to be the missionary, I guess, incubator back here in the States so that they're able to go over there and they can take the gospel. They can't take the gospel if they don't have it.
Yes, absolutely. You can't give what you don't have. So man, guys, our time is going quick, but so let me maybe have one of you respond to each of my next questions, and then, you know, if there's anything else, we can come back to it. So but my next question, so each of your organizations focuses on spreading the gospel in the U.S. Maybe you've already answered this a little bit, but why is that a priority for you? Oh, I didn't select anyone. Henry, why is that a priority for you?
Well, it's the link in the chain. If we are to think in terms of the globe of the entirety of the Great Commission, you have Jerusalem, your local missions. You have which I would say is the local church, the immediate outreach of a ministry. You have a regional, national perspective of Judea and Samaria, the global perspective or universal perspective of undermost part of the earth. It's a link in the chain. And anytime there's a broken link at any one of those places, then the Great Commission falls. So it's part of the system, it's part of the program that God has given to us, and we are to fulfill that aspect of it. Therefore, missions on a national level, if it's overlooked, we can't escape local missions. It's right in front of our face. There's an exotic nature of overseas global missions because it's a cross-cultural excitement of going to another people group and so forth. So often the missions to America or to the United States particularly is often like the middle child of missions that gets overlooked. It's to borrow the old cliche from generational cliche of my day, we're the Jan Brady of missions. Right. Everybody looks at cute little Cindy Brady because she's cute with the curls. Everything else is Marsha, and everyone overlooks Jan Brady. And so we have to be very careful not to allow that to happen because it's an important link of the chain. And frankly, it would be just as inordinate for us as missionaries to America to overemphasize our own importance. Right. Because again, if any part of the Great Commission falters, then the whole collapses.
Yeah. So for sure. So John, your organization focuses somewhat specifically, right, on church revitalization, right. And especially in rural North America. Why is that a priority for you guys?
Well, because it's a backbone of our country, and it's another overlooked piece, as Henry was talking about. We don't want to overlook any spot. Right. Neglected. For years, the rural settings. There's the rural churches that were the background of missions to the cities, missions to overseas. We had these churches, and the idea years ago was, well, we don't need to talk to those people. They're solid, and they were solid. But as has already been talked about, generation has gone by. People have gotten old. They've gone off to glory, and we have not done a very good job of solidifying the knowing Christ in the rural area, the being of solid character, and a commitment to going into full-time Christian ministry. We've told people they can be a Christian farmer, which is great, but we have kind of shot ourselves in the foot with the idea of, from those rural churches, why not go into full-time pastoring, Christian education, whatever, missionaries overseas, and we've backed off. We have stopped preaching who we are. We want farmers to be solid Christians, but we also want them to consider the whole world well, to get a world vision from Christ. And we've seen in America today that probably one of the most neglected group are the flyover zone people. And we're not against city ministry at all, but we're kind of like raising our hand, like we're there with you in the rural areas as well. Those places where I've heard it said, well, nobody lives there. Wrong. There are people. If one person lives there, they need the Lord, and we need that. Their foundation, the whole situation of reaching the world for Christ.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have specific numbers here, but I remember studies that have been done that proved for years that a large number of the missionary force was actually coming from the rural areas of our country, simply because of their solid work ethic and their commitment to just diligent work. And if we lose the rural areas, then we lose another link in providing the missionary force that will reach out in North America and around the world.
Yeah, and I would, Doug, I would even I would back that up. Sitting in my position as a college professor, and just say that I think I've seen some of that transition, as we have less students who are interested in pursuing that kind of ministry, and it's a very it's a cycle, right? It's very much a cycle, and as Henry was saying, if any one of those links is broken, then it's going to affect the rest of them. So Doug, I want to address this next question at you first, and then the rest of you can chime in. But you all have a wealth of ministry experience. And so you've all been involved in ministry for quite a while. Henry dated himself a little bit with the Brady Bunch reference there. But you've got a lot of experience, okay? And so from your experience and the organizations you're involved with, what would you say the U.S. church needs the most right now? You first, Doug.
I think we're seeing several trends that we need to consider. I'm starting with the need, and then we'll end up with what they need. But I just have, and again, I'll date myself. Henry and I are close to the same age. When I was growing up, there weren't very many cultural obstacles. In other words, school events weren't scheduled on Sunday. Nothing was even scheduled on Wednesday night when I was in high school. When I was growing up, there really wasn't mega church competition. There wasn't the massive funding of short-term trips with no intention of being full-time. When I was growing up, there was at least a God consciousness. There wasn't an apparent political adversarial front to deal with. I don't know that I have the answer, but I'm saying I think some of those are some of the trends that we have to confront. And honestly, I think the only way we're going to confront them is through the consistent teaching of the Word,
Amen.
and through consistent missionary outreach. And that has to, just looking at those 5 or 6 things that I listed there, that to me is enough reason to say we need missions in North America. We need missions here in the United States. So we've got to somehow reverse the trends, and we're not going to do that in anything other than consistent preaching of the word. And I say preaching because we're talking about churches, but even in camp ministries, which feed the churches, and children's ministries, which are an offshoot of the church, and all of that. So I think we got to somehow figure out a way to reverse some of those trends that have taken place over the last 3 or 4 decades.
Sure. So, Henry, John, thoughts?
I would simply say that I think what's missing right now in churches, or has been missing, I think that we are now seeing the rotten fruit of it, is the fact that we have not taken seriously the 2 Timothy 2:2 charge in the Paul giving his ministry life and investing in Timothy investing in faithful men investing in others also, because I think what's really lacking today is available personnel. And this isn't just in Henry Vosburgh's world of church planting for Midwest Church Extension. This is in the entire church world. Churches who cannot find pastors, they can't find eligible candidates for pastors. A day was, as Doug was referring to, there was a day when church search committees hated to gather together because they didn't want to go through a stack of 200 resumes.
Yeah. Today, and that wasn't that long ago either. Today,
they don't want to gather as a search committee because they don't want to look at each other in the face waiting for the mail to show up, hoping that there might be a resume in the box. That trend has completely flipped, and there's only one diagnostic answer as to why that exists, and that is the fulfillment, the exercise thereto, and fulfillment of 2 Timothy 2:2. If we have not invested in others to follow behind us, then just as we've been mentioning, generations of the past, they don't just cycle new men into place as if God's just going to raise them up out of the soil or drop them out of the sky. There had to have been an intentional investment of these things, of ourselves in others. And I know that that's what MCE is attempting to address. We feel that we're way behind the curve in what we're doing. We believe that we have answers to that, and they are now being implemented, and hopefully we will eventually see trends reverse. But as a broad, in the broad spectrum, what's lacking is personnel. We don't lack for places to go. I find that we very seldom do we lack the finances and the resources. That usually seems to take care of itself. It's usually in the area of personnel that are available and qualified and competent to be able to do the work.
We are out of time, but I do want to ask you one more question before we close. And that is, in a couple words, what is the greatest need facing your particular ministry today? So, Henry?
Yeah, I come back to the personnel issue. As I mentioned before, we never lack for places to go. The spiritual needs in all kinds of places around the Midwest are very evident. And therefore, the greatest need in MCE right now is to find personnel, whether they are ready to come to us as men that can be dropped into immediate church planting scenarios. That's great, but that's not really our concern. We are looking for young men that would be willing to be trained, enter our residency program, learn what it is to plant churches in a very healthy, practical context of ministry, and be sent. That's what we need.
Yeah. Doug?
I would echo that. As I interact with the various members of the Association of North American Missions, the urgent need is staffing. But it was interesting as I went through 5 years ago to prepare for the 75th anniversary of the association, I found notations all through the history indicating the same need. So I came to the conclusion that maybe we're just like Gideon. God needs to prove to us that he's really doing the work, and he's always going to make us think we don't have enough. Gideon went from 10,000 to 300 or whatever the numbers were, but God's still going to get the work done.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, personnel also. We're looking for people that truly are missionaries. They go anywhere, overseas, next door to a Walmart, whatever. People who really know God, know need, and want to get to know him better. Men and women of character that in the heart they have what it takes as followers with the Lord, and then they're ready to. People want to go out there and do the job, but they don't know what the need is, and their character will show up as not very godly. And so real missionaries will answer all of these questions by, here, Lord, send me. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you. It doesn't surprise me. Honestly, that was the answer I expected to hear is people. We need people. Luke 10:2, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Pray the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest field. And so if you are listening to this, I want to extend an invitation. I want to extend an invitation to join us here at Calvary University for our missions conference, the Conference on Global Engagement. It's always the last week of January 23rd through 27th. You can find more information about it on our website. These three gentlemen will be doing some seminars throughout the time there, as well as many others. And so make plans to join us. And then I want to extend a final invitation before I close, and that is that if God is tugging on your heart, one of my favorite things when prospective students come to Calvary and the parents are always going, will my son, daughter be able to get a job? It's not a question of if, it's a question of which one do you want. Here's the three great organizations, and I mean, Doug is connected to multiple other organizations that they're saying, come and serve with us in taking the gospel throughout the United States and North America. So thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen, once again for joining us. Thank you to our listeners. This is Calvary Conversations. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Calvary Conversations, a service of Calvary University in Kansas City, Missouri. We invite you to participate in the conversation by contacting us through the Calvary University website, calvary.edu, or by calling us at 816-322-0110. Join us again next week for another Calvary Conversation.